meantime, here's a little music for you. All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. My name is Brett Caldwell, and I've got the unique honor and pleasure to interview Mr. Noah Ostroff. Noah, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing today, Brett?
Good. So I don't know if everybody can see. I put kind of a little bio of you, and I know we're gonna kind of dive into who you are. So outside of me just kind of reading a bio and introducing you, I'm gonna start with an unusual question. I'm gonna start with if there was a song that kind of described or defined Noah and your journey or who you are, your life, what would that song be? And maybe we'll have it at the end for you.
Man, that's a good question. There's so many good songs out there.
Yeah.
Think about what I want to dance to, and what gets me pumped up, and like if I were to walk into a party, what would it be? But you asked me what would kind of the theme song be if we were talking about like a theme song of my life. Um, I think there's a couple things that come to my mind. There's the song "Remember My Name," Fort Minor. You know that song?
I do know
10%,
that song.
10% luck, 20% skill, 15% concentrated power of will, 5% pleasure, 50% pain, right?
Yeah.
That's a good one. I think of one from my childhood, old school tub thumping, Chumbawamba. Remember that one?
Oh Lord, we could have gone with that one.
I,
All
I
right.
get I get knocked down, but I get up again.
There you go.
I could come up with a lot of them.
I think it gives us a little insight to who you are to kick us off. So it's my distinct honor. Thank you so much for taking time to share with the Heart of Atlanta group today and kind of who you are in your journey. Obviously, I put your numbers up, but kind of just give us a description of who you are, your team, what you do. Just kind of set the stage for us a little bit.
Well, what I'm doing now is I have a team called Philly Living, and it's a team of about, I don't know, 25 or so agents. We focus on sales, rentals, um, commercial. We also have a property management division now. We also have a security alarm division now. Um, and so that team, I've been doing that since about 2008. Our team consistently selling, 125 to 250 million a year. I'm also the OP of a market center in Philadelphia called KW Philly. And I started that market center just under 5 years ago. And it's a pretty big market center now. We have about 400 agents, sell about, 1.5 billion a year in real estate last year. So that's kind of on the business side of things, on the Keller Williams side of things. But I also have a development company, and we develop houses, probably do about 100 houses a year, or 100 units a year, I should say. And then have some other investments and stuff that I kind of focus my time on from a business perspective. And then from a family perspective, which is the most important thing,
Yeah.
wife, 3 kids, enjoying myself, trying to find ways to live life and experience fun things in life.
I love it. So I'm going to ask you to be a little transparent for a minute, and I think you'll be okay with this because I know you well. I think it would be important to know how old you are, because all you've accomplished in your short time, I think, is pretty impressive.
As long as there's no follow-up questions,
Yep.
I'm 21 years old.
Yeah, right.
I'm 39. I'm
You're
39.
39. So
Yep.
you got into real estate at what age?
I got into the sales part of real estate in 2008. So I guess I was about 27, but I was in the construction and project management part of real estate right out of college. So I
Okay.
guess I was 22 at that time.
So why don't you give us a little picture of your life story, where you grew up, kind of how you got to real estate.
Okay. So I'll kind of give you the quick version. So growing up, I was a very active kid, always doing different things, into sports, played all different sports growing up. When I was 12 years old, I started to DJ. So from the time I was 12 to the time I was 25, I was DJing. So every weekend from the time I was 12 to 25, pretty much I was at bar and bat mitzvahs and weddings and sweet 16s and all different types of parties DJing. That was kind of my first real job. When I was 18, I started my own DJing company once I got to college, and kind of grew that to a pretty decent sized company. I interned at a radio station in high school. I worked for MTV for 2 summers as an intern. If you remember the MTV Beach House, you remember that back in the day? So I worked there one summer down in Key West. I almost became a stockbroker out of college. I was very into the stock market back then. After college, I moved to Florida, spent 3 years there. I worked for a couple large home builders, Toll Brothers, Centex Homes. That's kind of where I learned, the project management side, the acquisition side, and sales and new construction side of the business. I did go to Penn State for college, got married when I was 23, started having kids when I was 25, had twins by the time I was 28. Then I moved back to Philadelphia and started a trucking company, driver leasing company. So we leased out truck drivers that had their own tractor. We leased out truck drivers to companies that had their own tractor trailers. So within a couple of years, I grew that company to about 125 employees in 3 different states.
And you're in your 20s at the time, right?
I'm about 25, 26 at the time, somewhere around there. Then I didn't enjoy doing that. So I stopped that company, and then I got into real estate sales in 2008. So I started doing real estate sales, and I started my team in probably 2010. Came over to Keller Williams in 2014. I was at Coldwell Banker before then. 2016, I started my own Keller Williams brokerage. And somewhere along that journey, I started investing in real estate. And that's kind of what I'm passionate about today, is building wealth and investing in real estate and, doing development and stuff like that. I acquired some companies along the way. I acquired a property management company recently. So we now manage about 2,500 properties, and recently acquired a security alarm company. So we have about 300 and so security alarm clients that we're growing there, and we'll dive into why later on for that. And all along the way, I traveled to probably over 100 different countries, and that's really what I'm passionate about. I really like to travel and do fun experiential things in my life. So that's the quick version.
So I guess I want to ask specifically about that. Like, we all talk about the big why, or what funds us, or it's not always money, right? So for you, what would you say your driving force, your motivation is?
I would say it's freedom. So for me, it's financial freedom, and also to have the freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do it. My goal when my kids are all in college, which will probably be in, I don't know, less than 10 years from now, I want to, just be able to travel around the world and not be tied down to anything. So my motivation is setting up my life and my businesses to be able to do that when I'm able to do that.
To actually unlock you from it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. All right. So take me back to your journey in real estate. So you started in 2008, and obviously you had an incredible background that I'm assuming you parlayed your knowledge from the new construction world, right?
Yep.
And applied it to residential real estate or commercial real estate, right? Um, Talk to me about that. How'd you start your business?
So I told you I had that trucking company, and I decided to shut the company down on a Friday. Basically, I was driving an hour each way to and from work, sitting in a very small office. Didn't really like what I was doing. I was making great money, but I didn't like what I was doing. So Friday night, I decided to shut the company down. Uh, by 4 o'clock, I had found a real estate course that I was going to do, which started on Monday. It was an 8-day course. So in Pennsylvania, you need, I think it's like 60 hours or something like that to get your license. So it was an 8-day course, 7.5 hours a day or whatever the math works out to be. And within, a week and a half, I got my license, and I studied my butt off every day. I would go to, Star or Barnes and Noble. I guess you guys have that where you're at. And
If they're still around.
if they're
Yeah.
still around, yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I would study every single day, and just like really took it very seriously. I was interviewing companies to work for. And I didn't know at the time that pretty much every real estate company just hired anybody that walked in the door. So I came in with a business plan and a PowerPoint presentation, and had my like 5-year plan of here's what I'm going to do in year one. I'm going to start a team in year 2 or 3, and here's how I'm going to do lead generation. And I did research on it, and that's kind of how I got in, and I had a whole plan. And it's funny to look back on that plan now, because they looked at me when they interviewed me like, who the heck is this guy? Why is this guy coming in with a PowerPoint presentation? Like, we were going to hire you anyway, before, the second you walked in the door, because that's kind of what real estate companies do, right? For the most part. And I was the guy that I didn't want to wait 2 or 3 weeks for the state to mail my license. So I drove up there the day I got my test, that passed my test, 2.5 hours, and picked my license up myself. And on my way back to Philadelphia, I started making calls. Hey, I just got my real estate license. You looking to buy or sell a house? And I made calls for the first 2.5 hours. And, the first year in real estate, I was calling for sale by owners. I was calling expireds. I was, trying to learn from everybody that I could learn from. Back then, the office that I was in, Mike Ferry coaching was like a big thing. And that was, it was all about prospecting and learning scripts and stuff. And I just assumed that's what everybody in real estate did. So I said, okay, well, I'll just do that too, because the successful people in my office were doing that.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I made calls. I just, I kind of had these goggles on that, told me that every single person is a potential buyer or seller or renter. Every single person needed a place to live. And I just approached that. They called me the shameless promoter, because everywhere I went, I was promoting me being in real estate, or me, trying to help people buy and sell houses. And, the first year I sold 50 houses, and, sort of learned what to do from there. I was running around. Probably second year or so, I started hiring an assistant and started growing my business that way. And I knew early on that I wanted to have this freedom. And so I knew I knew that I wanted to be home to have dinner with my family every night at 6 o'clock or whatever. And, I knew that I wanted to spend the weekends with my kids and not really work on the weekends. So I made a conscious effort to be a listing agent early on in my career. And I knew that if I was a listing agent, I can control my time better, because buyers run you around, and you don't really have as much control over your time. So I focused on listings, and I did that. And
At what point did you come to that realization? Early on, or were you driving buyers around all day and all night and go, okay, I got to figure this out and become a listing agent?
I always knew that I wanted to. So first year in the business, I started to get burnt out, because I had, I guess it's 2008. I had I don't know, a 1-year-old or 2-year-old at the time. And, I would get to work at 8 o'clock or whatever time I would get to work. I would work till, I don't know, 6 o'clock, and I would come home, have dinner, put my daughter to bed, and then work till 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And because, in this business, the more you work, the more money you actually can make. And I
I
worked.
think it would, I think it'd be important to point out, I'm not sure everybody caught the year. This is 2008 in the middle of the recession, right? And you sold 50 houses when you started your business in the middle of a recession. And I think that's a testament to what anybody can succeed in any market if they're willing to do what it takes, right?
Yep. And I didn't know any different. Everyone was complaining how bad of a market it was and how good it was the year or two before. And to me, it was a good market. I was selling a lot of houses. I didn't know any better. And I said, if this is a bad market, I can't wait till we get into a good market,
Yeah, of
because it
course.
felt fine to me. Um, so anyway, so back to your question. So first year I was starting to get burnt out, and I knew that I had to get better control of over my time. So I made a conscious effort to not work weekends anymore after the first year, to get home by 6 o'clock, and to start to control my time better by letting people know when I was available to go on appointments. And most of the time they were willing to move the appointment to within normal business hours. And every once in a while when they weren't, I either decided to take the listing on the listing appointment on the weekend, or miss out on the business. But by missing out on the business, I was gaining, more personal time or time with my family, which was more important to me. So I realized early on, the importance of work-life balance.
Yeah. And listings became the first lesson of how to achieve that, right?
Yep, because you have listings, and with listings, you have something that you can market and promote. And with that, we were able to bring in additional buyers off of that, and sit open houses and all the things that come with listings. And that became sort of the key to the business, and controlling of the time, which is what was important to me.
Yeah. So let me go back, because we talk about leads, then listings, and leverage, right? And it's kind of the pyramid of the pinnacle of a real estate agent's growth. And I was reading in your bio, and it said, so you started your career in 2008, and by 2010, it said you had the most controlled buyer sales, right?
Yeah.
So to me, that is the pinnacle of a lead generation part of that triangle, right?
Yeah.
And then it said in 2013, you had the most controlled listing sales. So it was almost like you were going the triangle journey. You did your lead generation, you knocked it out of the park with buyers, you moved it to listing lead generation, you knocked it out of the park with listings, and then we moved on to leverage, right? But talk to me a little bit about that.
So, we always look at ourselves and we say we're in the lead generation business. Nobody ever went out of business from having too many leads. And, I came in with the mindset every day as if I were unemployed. And my job that day was to get hired, right? Whether to get a listing appointment, whether to get a client, a buyer, I would come into work every day to try to sell a house. And that was my mission every single day. So early on in my career, we started phillyliving.com. I actually acquired that website from somebody because it had amazing SEO on it. And we came up number one for every real estate related keyword in Philadelphia with we didn't pay for it. There was no forced registration. There was no SEO or any of that stuff. It was just like natural SEO. And we would get 1,000 people a day that would come to the site. We would get 250 to 300 leads a month from people that would say, like, these were real leads. These weren't fake leads because there was no forced registration. These were people that were saying, hey, show me a house, or hey, have a real estate agent contact me. And so I knew that lead generation was an important thing early on. And so we did that for a while. And then of course, the algorithms changed, and we had to sort of pay money for SEO and SEM, search engine optimization, search engine marketing. And it became expensive, but we did it for a while. And then Google changed their algorithm again, and we changed with it. And then eventually it just became too expensive, right? So then we had to reinvent ourselves. And we think every 6 to 9 months, you get about 6 to 9 months out of every good marketing initiative before somebody either copies off of you or it just becomes ineffective anymore. So we're constantly looking, 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead to figure out what the next thing is. And so over the course of our life cycle of our team, we had to constantly reinvent what the things were. So originally, we talked about lead generation for buyers. And then we positioned ourselves, positioned myself as a listing agent. And I realized that instead of going after one client with one listing, I could get more bang for my buck if I went after the people that were making the product, right? Making the product, meaning the developers, the builders, right? They were making
Yeah.
the product that we were going to sell. So I would go after them, because now instead of getting one for one, I could get one client who was giving me 5 listings or 10 listings at a time.
Yeah.
So I started going after the builders, started finding them properties and bringing them deals, and making them money. And then in turn, I would list the property for them the following year. And then as they become more experienced and more confident and had more money, then I would sell them bigger pieces of land where they can build 3 or 5, or 10, which in Philadelphia, that's like considered bigger, because we're urban infill here. And then after a while, I just, represented probably 50% of the builders in the city. And I had a lot of big projects. And at any given time, we had, 200 or 250 listings that were either active or coming on the market. So I
Right.
started shifting my focus on that and trying to build that. And then of course, with that comes, you need to have leverage. So when I was an individual agent, I literally was running to the printer. I was running to my car. Like, I was so busy, I literally was running everywhere. And my manager at the time was telling me, you have to hire an assistant. You need to hire somebody. And I said, why would I want to pay somebody, $40,000 a year, whatever the amount was back then, to do what I can do? I can put these properties on the MLS. I can write my agreements of sale. It takes me 10 minutes. But 10 minutes times, a certain number of
Times 50.
times
Yeah.
50, it starts to add up. So I finally caved, and I used to complain to him, hey, I can't take any more than 10 listings. I'm so busy, I can't handle more than 10 listings. And he kind of laughed at me, and I laugh thinking about that now. I hired an assistant, and then all of a sudden I was able to take 50 listings, and I felt like I only had, 10 listings. And at every point in the game, I brought somebody on strategically to allow me to have more capacity to go out and focus on my highest and best use, which was sales, right? Lead generation, sales, and doing business. So it went from admin to, then we split the admin. The admin used to do marketing and, operation stuff and everything. And then when we got too busy, we split that role into a marketing person and then an operations person. And then when the marketing person got too busy, we split it into like, graphic design and like strategic marketing. And, and then we had multiple transaction coordinators. So we sort of, every step along the way, we did that. And then I'll fast forward a little bit unless you have some questions, but then we started to get into expansion in 2017, when that was kind of a big thing around Keller Williams. So we expanded to 13 locations around the country. We opened up a bunch of offices in Miami and Ohio, and we even opened up in the UK. And we hired about 80 people to our team that year. And with that, we had to hire more transaction coordinators and marketing people. And I had to bring on a director of sales and an expansion director and a CEO and, regional directors. And, that's the leverage that I needed to be able to have this explosive growth that we were looking for.
Right.
So I'll kind of stop there, because I'm sure you have some questions around that. But that was kind of my journey around lead generation and leverage, and with the constant focus all the time for me on growth.
Yeah.
With growth and profitability were my focuses all the time. And those still are my focuses in all my businesses.
So kind of thinking back, like, and I agree, what I know of you and in our relationship, I would describe you as somebody that has explosive growth, right? Like, you don't just have a trajectory line, you do your hockey sticks and in the things that you go after. If everybody understands the hockey stick analogy, it just kind of slow and then boom, right? Explosive. But I guess my question for you is really, if you're being introspective around yourself in these different facets of growth, what's the secret to your success? What are the characteristic traits you think you bring to the table? Or if you were advising the next Noah Ostroff that's 27 years old getting into the business, or somebody that's drawing a line in the sand today and saying, man, I want to be an MREA. Tell me the secret to it. What are those secrets?
I would say it's my ability to be resourceful. And I think being resourceful is a quality that I look for when I bring people into my company, because I was able to figure out how to get from point A to point B, right? how to stay focused on the high level growth that we needed. And being resourceful is an important thing, because sometimes we overestimate what we can accomplish in a year, right? We heard this before, but underestimate
Yeah.
what we can accomplish in 5 years. And I think being resourceful helped me to really, I can go into being resourceful all along, but like, that's really the thing that helps me figure things out and understand what it is that I'm focusing on. That would sort of, to me, be the secret sauce of what I do.
Gotcha. Um, well, let's dive into that expansion, because what I know about your business today is you don't have 80 people in expansion locations. You've kind of pulled back a little bit. Why don't you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So let me. I had a thought it popped in my head when I
Go
was talking
ahead.
about resourceful, and then I couldn't get it out. So I think when we talk about being resourceful, we talk about resources and resourceful, right? Two different things. So a lack of resources is not the problem. It's a lack of resourcefulness is a lot of times the reason why people have a problem. So the success that we have, it comes from the ability to actually be able to figure things out. And the failures that people have come from the inability to figure things out. So my ability, or the ability to execute and implement on the visions that we have, that's what the difference maker is in our career. So that's the ability to get from point A to point B, right? From vision to execution. That's what's really going to separate people from the pack when we're talking about resourcefulness.
Right. So it's the problem solving. It's the putting the pieces together, not necessarily the resource of money or people or time. It's necessarily the being able to connect the dots along the journey, right? To get from A to B is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
So you asked me about expansion, but I was
Yeah.
thinking about my answer to resourceful. So I didn't
That's okay. So
question.
you stopped your story saying I had 80 people and regional directors and all these locations. What I know is that's not what your team looks like today. It's come back this way,
Yep.
and I'm sure that was intentional and by default too, right? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so we expanded all over the country. We were doing that year that we expanded. We did, I don't know, 250 million in sales. We sold 800 and some homes, something like that. We had 5.6. We had like 6 million in GCI that year, somewhere in that range. But you know what? It wasn't fun. We we had so many expenses. My expenses that year were like $250,000 a month, and we had to sell like 65 houses a month just to break even. And some months we sold 110 houses, and most months we sold over 65. But there were some months that we sold 65 houses,
Yeah.
and that's an amazing month by pretty much all standards. But to sell 65 houses and not make any money, like, that's not fun. And I didn't want to have a business where I couldn't even be happy to sell that many houses. Like, we're doing all this work for nothing. So I said, this is stupid. So we basically tore it all down. We had 20 something people in Miami. We had 3 offices in Miami. We shut it down pretty much overnight. They were not happy that we shut it down, but we had to do it. We were doing pretty well in the UK, and it was just too expensive to get the money out of the country, and the model was just very different over there. So we shut that down, and we just had a relentless focus on expenses and profit over the next 2 years. And when I say relentless focus, like, I'm talking about when we would cut $15 out of our expenses, we would we would high five each other. Like, yeah, we just found $15 that we can cut out of our monthly budget.
250,000 to $15.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it took us a while, but after like 2 years, we got our expenses down to like 50,000 a month, which is much more manageable for the size operation that we had. And then at that point, we only had to sell, I don't know, 15 houses a month to break even, which we were doing a lot more than that every month. So it became much better. So, if you look at the bio of what I have, you could see we went from 250 million or whatever the number was down to 150 million the next year. And people say, oh, well, your business really fell off by a lot that next year. And I kind of laugh because it was by design. But if you look at my expenses went down by more than half. And we actually were more profitable with $100 million less volume that next year than we were the previous year with all
Sure.
that volume. And it felt much better to be a lot more profitable off of less volume than, for the 250 million was good for the ego, but it wasn't good for the piggy bank.
Yeah.
It wasn't good for my
Well, that's a
pocket.
good lesson in real estate, period. Whether you're 10 million or 125 million, the ego will get you in trouble if you don't hold your money accountable, right?
Big time, big time. So it was
Yeah.
a good lesson that I learned there, and we have to just stay constantly focused on our profit. And it's a constant battle between value and profit. And I don't know what the mix of agents are on here, whether they're individual agents or you have teams. But if you have teams on here, or even if you're individual agents, but we try to run we try to teach at our brokerages people how to be business people, right? Because, and I'm sure you guys are learning the same thing, but being a business person and having a profit and loss statement and looking at your cost of sale and your expenses and your profit margins and understanding how that is, that's an important thing. But also, if you have a team, understanding the value that you need to provide to agents, or even having a brokerage, you need to know the value that you need to provide to agents, and also what people are willing to pay for that value. Right. So at some point, you like to pay your agents 50% split if they're on a team, but agents want a higher split. So what
Yeah.
is it they're willing to pay for that? And it changes over time. So trying to manage that and still remain profitable. That's sort of the constant battle that we face all the time in our businesses.
Right. Right. So, expansion, and I'm going to put words, and please correct the words if I'm misspoken. But to me, what I know about you is you've gone deep in your business model inside the city of Philadelphia, as opposed to going wide into Miami and England and all these things. Now, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So what we're building now is connected companies. And as I mentioned before, the lead generation changes over time. And as I'm sure all of you are aware, it's very expensive. Leads are very expensive these days, right? Whether you're paying Zillow or whatever, it's very expensive to get leads. And the quality of the leads is just not great anymore that you're paying for in most cases. So I'm trying to create our own ecosystem in Philly Living so we can generate our own leads. So if you think about, the way I sort of dissect how I'm going to make decisions is I figure out, like, take it way back as far as you can. So if you think about when somebody buys a house or sells a house, people will buy and sell a house from you because of a relationship, right? And typically that relationship happens at the time of transaction, right? When somebody's ready to buy or when they're ready to sell a house. Well, it's very difficult to time that in our businesses if we're not already in a relationship with somebody. So we figure, like, all right, how do we get into relationships with people earlier on in the process before they become a Zillow lead and we have to buy it back from Zillow, right? What are the things that we can get in relationships with them outside of real estate that help? And I asked the question, what are buyers before they are buyers, right? And the answer is they're renters in
Yeah.
many cases. So how do we get to more renters? So a couple of years ago, I bought the largest residential rental brokerage in Philadelphia. It had, at the time that I bought it, it had, leased out 10,000 properties, at least about 1,000 properties a year. And so now we had 1,000 renters that we were working with every year that will hopefully, if we do a good job, become buyers in the future. Recently bought a property management company. So now we manage 2,500 properties. So now we have more tenants, and we have, landlords. So landlords, they're investors. Landlords are buyers and landlords are sellers. So now we're creating an ecosystem within our world. So now I have more reasons to reach out to people, more reasons to stay in touch with people. And then eventually, when they're ready to buy and sell, they're already in our world. They're already in our ecosystem because we've done a good job. We formed a relationship with them, and we've stayed with them along the way. And because we're talking to them on a regular basis, because we have a reason to talk to them, we know when they're ready to buy. We know when they're ready to sell because we know when their lease is ending. We know that landlords look for certain types of things. And so that's sort of the journey of what we're building here, these connected companies. And there's other companies that we've recently bought or are currently in the process of buying to try to stay in front of more homeowners, more people.
I'm laughing over here because what I know is most real estate agents, they don't love renters. They'll do it, but they don't love them. And here you're saying this is the gold mine. Here's the gold mine of these are the people that will be the buyers someday. And you building a database of the people that are in this pool that eventually will become your buyers here. And all you got to do is maintain that relationship, and your cost is next to nothing, right?
Well, I think most real estate agents and most business people don't have a long-term perspective on things.
Okay.
And I think it's important to have a long-term perspective on business and for sure on investing in wealth building, which hopefully we can talk about that as well. But
Yeah.
you have to have a long-term perspective on these things because these renters could, it could be a year before they buy something or 2 years or 3 years. And if you're not able to put the time into your business to think more than just in 1 year blocks or 1 month blocks, then you're never going to have that long-term perspective. And you're constantly going to be chasing leads that are going to end up going to somebody else.
Yeah. I just want to point out a statement real quick for the people on Facebook or the people on here. This is what you mean when you say resourcefulness is you're able to connect the dot from here to here and you understand that process. And it's you being resourceful. And you think that's one of your secrets to success. No?
Yeah, we talked about this, the renters. We talked about, if you want to sell a product, who's making the product, right? That's the developers, right?
Right.
So you have to think about business from a perspective of dissecting down to the lowest common denominator of where everything is coming from, and that's where you want to attack. You want to try to get to the source of the business or the lead or whatever before it ever crosses any of your other peers' minds.
Perfect. What do you find your best return on investment?
People.
Okay. Tell me more. Develop that.
So a good hire should be worth 3 times what a bad hire is. Everybody that I bring into my world, I look at them as an investment and not as an expense. So I try to figure out how that person's going to pay for themselves. And so, I tell people all the time in my world, you say you want to do whatever. So whatever the position is that they want to do, I said, all right, well, show me how you're going to pay for yourself, right? Because if you want to make $1 million a year, I'm willing to pay you $1 million a year if you're able to show me how you can make the company $2 million a year, right? I don't think about, well, this position is only worth $40,000 or $50,000. I think about what that person can bring as far as a return. So if it's, leverage for me early on in my career, hiring an admin, the return on investment was allowing me the time to go out and do more high dollar producing activities, which would allow me to eventually make more money. If I were to bring on a director of sales, the goal would be to make my agents more productive. So then the investment would be to make more money from the other agents on my team. If I were to bring on a recruiter, the goal would be to have them recruit more people that were going to come onto the team and do more business. If I were to bring on a lead listing agent, it would be to go out and get more listings and more opportunities to bring in more business. So any of those positions that would typically people would look at as an expense, to me, if they are in fact truly an expense, then they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of bringing a return on the position. So that's what I mean by that.
I love it because it kind of goes back to that leads, listings, and leverage, right? You get in the business and you start to actually experience leverage when you become a listing agent. And because you went through that journey and you became that person and the perspective, it actually teaches you these lessons. So when you get to a place of bringing people onto a team, you understand the investment versus the expense,
Yep.
right? Because of the journey you took.
Yeah, and it's the same thing. Like even a simpler form is when you start a team. Maybe one of the reasons I started a team was because I had too many leads and I needed to bring on a buyer's agent. So the return on investment there is, hey, I wasn't paying 50% out of the commission that I could have made. I was earning 50% of the commission that I wasn't getting any return on because I was too busy to handle all the leads that I had. Right. So rather than those leads going into thin air, I brought somebody on that I paid 50% to that I would have not made anything off of. So that was an investment and not as, losing 50%. It's, I guess, scarcity versus abundance mentality.
Absolutely. What do you see as your crystal ball? We're sitting here in a pandemic. I know Pennsylvania was a unique situation. They actually shut you down for, was it 60 days?
Yeah,
Um,
at least, yeah.
and it was one of the tightest environments through the pandemic that I'm aware of. But y'all survived. What's kind of your crystal ball around where we sit in as a world economy today and where we're going and what share?
All right, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the Sixers are going to win the NBA Finals this
Yeah,
year.
right.
Eagles are going to take the Super Bowl next year. um,
Do y'all have a quarterback? Keep going.
uh, I listen. I think there's so many ways I can answer this question. I think that I can look at this from a bunch of different perspectives. So let's start on the brokerage side of things. I think the big brokerages are going to take more market share. I think the small independent brokerages are going to have to either fold or roll into some of the bigger brokerages to be able to keep up with all the resources that are available. Um, I think that teams will probably, I think teams will probably become more dominant, and individual agents will either start small teams or roll into teams. And that's not like a general statement. I think that of course individual agents will still do great, but I think that teams will become even more of a thing than they are right now. Um, and I think that um, and I think the reason behind that is because I think we're realizing throughout these years that it's just easier to work together in real estate. There's so many different things that we have to do in a real estate transaction, and it's so hard for an individual agent to work at a high level and do all those things and provide the resources and services that your client needs while you're doing everything yourself, while you are the administrative person and you are the marketing person, you are the buyer and the listing agent, all that stuff. So I think, outsourcing that stuff to a team that has marketing and listing coordination and all that stuff, I think people already kind of know that, but I think it's going to become more of a thing. I think the real estate market is going to be, I think we're going to have another good year this year, because I think that a lot of the people, first of all, interest rates are still low, which is certainly helping everybody out. I think that 20% people on average saved more than 20%. People saved 20% more this year than historically speaking. I know that's not everybody, but a lot of people did. So some people have more disposable income than they previously had. And people are going to want to start spending that money when things open back up again. I read an article. I don't know if you were telling me about this, Brett, or if I saw it somewhere else, but I read an article about a Yale professor where they were talking about the roaring 20s, right? So back in the 1920s, but we're going to have another roaring 20s again, because, there's all this pent up demand for people wanting to go out and party and have fun and do wild things and, spend their money on experiences again. I think people realize the importance of experiences and connection with people. And I think they realize, for sitting in their houses all day, staring at, a bunch of little boxes on the screen, how important it is to have those connections and the little things in life that make us happy that throughout the day. There's a lot of things that we have throughout the day, these little wins that we get throughout the day that make us happy. We don't even realize they're little wins. Maybe it's saying hi to somebody when we get our coffee, or, whatever it is, like seeing somebody in the office or going out to happy hour on Friday, or whatever your things are, like that just make us happy. But we're not getting a lot of that stuff now, because those little bits of happiness add up to bigger pieces of happiness. Well, now, you get little tiny bits of negativity, and those little bits of negativity add up to big bits of negativity, and people are really feeling it this year. So I think you're going to see people just getting wild by the time
Great.
summer comes
I'm
around.
writing that down and putting your name next to it.
That's my crystal ball.
Yeah, great.
Wow.
Books and people. We always talk about how the books you read and the people you meet are kind of the two things that change the trajectory of your life the most, right? Is there any kind of book that you read along your journey you would recommend to us, or something along those lines?
I've read so many books. I read between, I don't know, 2 to 6 books a month, I would say. That's where I get a lot of my knowledge from. And it depends on where I'm at in my career. Sometimes I want to focus on sales books. Sometimes I want to focus on leadership or mindset or, um, other types of books. I get a lot of inspiration from outside of the real estate industry that I translate back into the real estate industry. Um, I can recommend so many good books. I really like the books that talk about obstacles and how overcoming obstacles will help you to do things like Obstacle is the Way was a good one I recently read. All the Spartan books I think are really good books if you're into that type of stuff. Spartan Up, Spartan Way, and Spartan Fit are all good books by Joe DeSena. Um, I like the Grant Cardone books. Those pump me
Of
up.
course.
Yeah, 10X Rule and all those, they pump me up. There's so many good books out there. I mean, I can give you my list. It's got hundreds of books on it. It just depends
Yeah.
on what it is you want to
I didn't know if
focus
there
on.
was like one book that changed the paradigm for you
I
or,
don't think so. I don't think there's
yeah.
one book. It's just the time of the year of where my head's at and where I need to shift my focus to. And that's, it changes all the time.
Yeah. So, people, right? So you've been in an inner circle with Gary Keller for a while, and obviously, I'm assuming he has some influence in your business thinking. Anybody else? You want to talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with big thinking, surrounding yourself with, yeah,
Yeah. So, I always give the story. People say to me, what is the biggest value you think about Keller Williams, right? Why, when you came to Keller Williams, what was the biggest thing? And the thing that I always say, which is true, is it's the collaboration and it's the sharing of ideas and it's the people you're around. Because when I was at Coldwell Banker, being the top agent over there, I had nobody to go to look up to ask questions of how to get to the next level. But then when I came to Keller Williams, and I was doing a lot of business over at Keller Williams too, but I was in the room with people doing 1,000 deals a year, 2,500 deals a year, and they were all willing to share everything everything that they did in their business, and simple ideas that like easily I could have, come up with on my own. I just didn't, and just being in the room with those people helped elevate the conversation and bring me to the next level. I remember first year I came to Keller Williams, I got an idea from one of the girls in my mastermind group, and it was this marketing idea that I did, and it was so simple. I'm like, man, why didn't I think of this? And I ended up doing 40 deals the next year just off of that one marketing campaign. So we're having different conversations, and just the conversations that you're having are what's going to elevate you to the next level.
sure. So in a way, the environment of Keller Williams has actually been a part of you in your resourcefulness.
I
It brings that to the table for you.
I seek out the people that I want to be with. We make a joke because I'm the guy that, like, if I'm going to a training event or a mastermind, I ask the organizer for the list of people that are going to be there before the event, because I want to know who's going to be there, because I want to make sure that I go and find those people and talk to them. Because if I don't, people might come and talk to me, and then I'm sitting there telling everybody what I'm doing, and I don't get a chance to learn from other people. So I make sure I know who's going to be at every event or cocktail party or whatever I go to, and I make a straight line to them whenever I get a chance, and just grill them with questions. I'm the one asking all the questions because I want to learn from all these other people.
Right. So Matt had asked a question in the chat. He said, what's your favorite questions to ask the people you lead?
What is my favorite question to ask the people that I lead? Well, there's a lot of questions, but I ask them what their motivation is. I think it's important to understand what people's motivation is and what drives them. I don't know, Brett, what do you think? You lead a lot of people too.
Yeah.
I would have to think about that question because I think there's some really good answers to it. I don't want to give you a bad answer, but maybe you can help me out with this one.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that you do really well is if you kind of understand the context of empire building versus empire protecting. And you need both to thrive a great organization, right? And I think you've in your journey that I've known you have really developed some great questions to help people see their role, or whether they're a protector or a builder, right?
Yep. The one question I ask, this maybe not for leaders, but this maybe can transition into a part of the conversation I think would be good to have, is I ask people, I talk a lot about wealth building. That's a big topic that I focus on because I don't think enough real estate agents really truly understand what it means. And for me, wealth building is having $1 more of passive income than you have in personal expenses, right? So your passive income funds all your expenses. So you can have that freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. So I ask a lot of real estate agents, and I'll ask you guys a rhetorical question. If you stop selling real estate tomorrow, how much money would you have coming in? Do you have enough money coming in to cover all your personal expenses? And if the answer is no, which it is for a lot of people, then we really need to have more wealth building conversations. And the goal is the goal is to make money when you sleep, right? That's kind of what wealth is, having money coming in without you having to do anything. So if I want to go away for a month, I still have money coming in. Whereas most real estate agents, if you're an individual agent, if you go away for a month, the business pretty much stops, right? And I'm trying to position myself in all of my businesses that if I go away or if I wanted to take some time off or whatever, the business is not dependent on me. I'm the one that boosts the business and takes it to the next level, but it's not necessarily dependent on me. So the question I ask is really about that, about wealth building and focusing on wealth, because as real estate agents, we get caught up a lot of times in the day-to-day of our business, and we don't get enough time to focus on wealth and investing in properties. And, as real estate agents, we have the best opportunity to see properties before anybody else gets to see it. So if you find a good deal, you should buy it, right? Or you should be resourceful and find somebody who can give you the money to buy it, or partner up with somebody to do that. Because at some point in your career, you're going to want to stop selling real estate or slow down on real estate, whether it's in 1 year or 10 years or in 30 years. You want to make sure that you have that long-term perspective that we talked about, building that business of the future, which is really what wealth building is building that business of the future. So every year I'm chipping away and buying investment properties that have, passive income, and maybe I'll add a couple $1,000s every single month or every single year. So in 10 years, when my kids are in college or less than that, I have X amount of dollars of passive income coming in because I've spent the last 10 or 15 years chipping away at it every single year. Yeah. So it's important as real estate agents, no matter how old you are, how young you are, you're never too late to actually be able to go and do that.
Right. And do you have a formula or a model or a way you would position this for people if you were teaching a class? Give us a nugget.
I'll tell you how I think about my business. So my job every day is selling real estate, running the brokerage. Like, that's my job. That's where I come into every day. I take the money from that, and I roll that money into the development stuff that I do. That's where you make the larger chunks of money. So I would recommend, if you're able to do it every year, do one flip, at least one flip, one, new construction or rehab that you can sell for a profit. That's where you're going to make the larger chunks of money. Then I take that money and I roll that into the long-term, the rental stuff, which is, I'm not really getting that money back. Like, once you put that money in there, it's sort of there.
The long game.
It's the long game, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of the journey of what you do. And I would say you need at least two of those things. You don't need all three of them, but you need at least the job part of it, selling real estate, to be able to roll that into the other, the long-term stuff, because you have to have a way to continue to fund that unless somebody's putting up the money for you. So that's how I would kind of think about that.
Right. And I think it gives you a different perspective on the job too, right?
Yeah.
It becomes part of the motivation to go, hey, I need to sell more houses because I need to have that money to go do this flip. So I could do this flip to start buying some rentals and play this long game. And it all works that way.
Yeah. Selling the house is not the end game. The end game is the freedom, right? But these are the steps that you need to have in order to get that freedom.
Perfect. No, I just got to tell you, this has been amazing. You're highly successful, but it's not just the fact that you're successful. It's the journey you took, the lessons you learned, and the little nuggets that you shared with us today. I hope everybody takes back and applies to their personal life and their business and their own personal journey. Right. So thank you for sharing. It means a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you guys. I'd play Chumbawamba, but they'll cut me off on Facebook. So
I get knocked down.
yeah,
I
you can
never
sing
get
it. There you go. Have a good one, Devin.